Kevin, former down footballer, to put you in there as well. Sorry, man, you're embarrassed about it, it's fine. Just for people that are not quite aware, bar that, who are you, what are you, what do you do with yourself these days?
Yeah, so the embarrassment comes from the question of footballer, that's debatable at the moment. So I'm head of sports and sports medicine at Swim Ireland, and went to the Olympics as head of performance analysis with Swim Ireland. Formerly worked with Ulster GAA, so all the guys running around and organising, supporting, that would have been me 5-6 years ago doing that. So spent about 8 years with these guys before via the institute and up in Swim Ireland, and been there for basically the last Olympics cycle from Tokyo finished up to Paris, and continuing on road.
Okay, so look, at any stage you want to ask a question, put up your hand, there's no problem. We've been room at the very end, so we've got nutrition, you've brought a lot there, but nutrition yourself, Sharon, and analysis, which continuously comes up, because if you come from a certain part of the world, and a certain age group maybe, and a certain way of being, analysis scares people. You can pay into performance stuff, you can pay into analysis packages, there's a cost implication, there's people here who are coaching underage teams. So analysis is a broad brush. Where are we in Gaelic games? Are we ahead of the curve? Are we behind it?
At inter-county level, there's absolutely no doubt the analysis that is done at inter-county level is as good as anything I've ever seen in any sport. And that's having gone to the institute, dealt with Olympic sports, gone to Swim Ireland, see what they do, talk to guys who work on an international level. When I come back down to the cohort of guys that work with the county teams, the stuff that's going on there and the groundbreaking stuff that they're doing it's just exceptional, blow your mind.
Like what?
So I was having a chat the other day with one of the guys working in the county analysis is new in, and they're doing stuff where they've got just live feedback of player impact on the pitch, in terms of what their players are doing, what the opposition players are doing, all the involvements in the play, which to most guys here it seems, so that's fairly basic, but this is all through the laptop, graphed up, there's numbers coming out, there's guys just looking at this constantly, see what's happening. That's the scary side of it, and that's the side that I would be very keen to say, you don't have to be at that level, you can use performance analysis. There's just guys, there's just really exceptional minds at the top level doing analysis in GAA, and they're just pushing this stuff on, and a lot of it is, it's experimental, trying to see if something works. Does this give us anything? Does it give us an edge? The vast majority of the cases it probably doesn't, but in some cases you hit on some wee thing that a manager or coach really buys into, players really buy into, and you just go with it then. But right down to the bottom level, analysis can play a role. It doesn't need software. It doesn't need expensive licenses, it doesn't need expensive equipment, it needs a pen and paper. And that's it. You've got a pen and a piece of paper and you know what you're looking for, and you're taking your note, or you're taking your wee numbers and what you're doing. You're starting some level of analysis, you're starting some level of objective measurement of what's going on the pitch, or in training, whatever way you want. So it's about managing the level you're at and what the need is. And up at inter-county level, you have managers and coaches who are asking for their earth, moon and stars, they want everything. And they don't need it. Even at inter-county level, some of them just need the basics. If you get the basics right, we'll be okay here. So right down to the bottom level, analysis to me always is a part of play in terms of we have to objectify what we're doing. We need to know what we're trying to improve, we need to know are we improving it as we're coaching. So it's just hitting on what you need to do, how you do it. And when I started Ulster GAA Eugene through Johnny and Denise had loads of A4 pages with templates where you could take all this stuff. Same thing still applies. You don't need the software, you don't need 1,500 quid a year in license. Pen and piece of paper, you can work it out.
Jeez, we don't need to be asking you here today at all then, is what you're telling me.
It's all about the people.
we'll get the people, because that does come down to quite a lot, but most people here are probably to some degree filming matches at least, that maybe have licenses, maybe don't. But just if we take that as a starting point, that we're filming games, what's the best use of it? I remember we were playing even in America, you'd have been sitting watching loads of stuff, you were bored out of your tree. Gosh, McConnell I worked with said that it was nearly one of the driving pieces why he wanted to quit getting football. He tested it. Now, that's going back a good while, in fairness. He'll not like me saying that, but it does go back a good while. But if we take filming games as a starting point, what are the basic do's and don'ts?
In terms of filming games, the main thing is just to make sure that you're using it. If you're going to the ball to film it, make sure you're using it. And whether that's the coach, whether that's the players, whether it's a manager, someone just has to do it. It doesn't have to be everybody. As long as you get something from it, Because for the vast majority, there's going to be some expense that if you bought a camera, you're doing it yourself, that's expensive. If you're paying someone to do it, it's expensive. So make sure you're getting value for money. Don't just video it, park it, like, we'll look at that later down the line. It's very relevant there and then. So when a game happens, make time, pencil time in the next day or 2 days, whatever it is, get it looked at and watch through it. And it can be there where you use your pen and paper and just go through and make notes. That's an element of analysis. I'm more numbers based. I want to see numbers. I would like to see, on a week by week, on a month by month, this is where we're at in this, in terms of these numbers, turnover count, shot return, whatever it is. And this year especially, when Bruce James right, how is this going to affect things? Is this going to improve what we're doing or cause us more challenges? So it's just about making sure you're using it. Getting the video, you're all done that you have that there, but making sure it's used. The amount of people I see the video games, the video is put online somewhere for players to look at or whatever, and it's never actually used, it's never referred to, doesn't impact on coaching. There's no rationale for using it, because they're just getting video and they'll have a look at that. But there has to be some sort of use.
Cheers. Sharon, switch to nutrition. It's a word people kind of think they know about it. From a Gaelic Games background, you back up in the Gaelic Games again? Are we allowed to talk about that? No? Is that an off-record conversation, everyone? No? The dairy nutritionist here, folks, as well. You know, you'll see Paddy Tally's number coming up on the phone. Just give me a sense of that. How does that sway between different sports? And are we different than Gaelic Games? That might be slightly, and I know there will be nuance differences, I get it here, but if we can start at a very half-educated starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to look at the individual in front of me, and from the point of Gaelic Games, and I mean, I had this talk, I remember whenever Sinai had Gaelic in here and we were chatting on a one-to-one, and burnout was the big topic of conversation many moons ago. I mean, the reality is burnout is the mismatch of not enough energy going in and too much energy going out. And the reality, unfortunately, is that we've got, nutrition now and how we look and body composition and people looking good in their vests and their jerseys and whatever. It does have a big impact. That's what you're dealing with, and there's a big social media element of how you look. And many years ago, I worked with the Leinster hurling team, and I saw a number of the players, and one player said to me, his first starting point, and this was his objective, was, I want to look like the guy in front of Men's Health magazine. Now, I said, he can't run, and he's probably airbrushed within an inch of his life as well. Yeah, I know that, but I want to look like that. So, that doesn't match with football or hurling or camogie. And what we've got is, there's the move more, eat less, to change your body composition or change your weight. And you've got a fighting weight or a running weight that you think that you need to be at. But what happens is then, if you think about it, start of the season, load in training goes up, and then people then start to cut back what they're eating. I mean, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to get injured or they're going to get sick. And that's the burnout, or they're not going to be able to return. So when I'm speaking with a player, I'm saying to them, you've got to have eyes on your training session tonight. You're going to have eyes on the one 2 days down the line. And I want you to have eyes in the first round of the championship on the 6th of April. Because you're no good injured standing on the sideline watching, or you're no good losing 3 weeks, a week here and 2 days there and 4 days there because you've got flu or you've got sick. Because the first thing that you do is, I can't train, therefore I eat less. So the messaging around food is now about how we look and the physicality. And there's this idea, particularly in Gaelic Games, that everybody has to have body composition of a cyclist or a triathlete. You don't. In fact, that's the biggest risk factor for an injury.
So we're getting it all wrong, in the sense that...
I mean, I don't think we are, but if you look at the sustainability of it, I think there's a lot of players that have a lot of injuries because of what they think sports nutrition is, and a lot of it is because the messaging for general public is very different to somebody who's training 4 nights a week, maybe training with 2 squads, has a full-time job, travelling, all of these things, the barriers that are there. And I mean, again, we have, you know, do you train, like these are some of the kind of small strategies I would say with people. Do you train the same way every day? No. Do you eat the kind of same way every day? Yes. There's your mismatch. So if you have a training session at 7 o'clock in the evening and the only time that you can fit in your gym session is the next morning at 7 o'clock before you go to work, that means you've got 2 training sessions in less than 13 hours. And if you eat the same way, there's your mismatch. So then what happens is you go to your Thursday pitch session and you're flat, there's nothing in the tank, you know? So it's that consistency that you're looking for. And that's what I would say to your players. Do you show up at every training session and you're ready to rock? You can run really hard, you've got loads of energy in the tank, or the end of the week, there's nothing there, or it's very inconsistent. That's a mismatch. And then if you're inconsistent in those training sessions, you can't actually develop the physicality that you're looking to try and do. You know, so you use your running and your gym to be able to develop the physicality rather than kind of starving yourself.
I mean, that's such an interesting thing, because even, you know, we're playing football, you kind of do eat the same similar patterns, but if you did it with...
Routine's good.
But but you're not doubling that if you have a session that evening and the following morning. Like, I mean, there is a takeaway that probably most of the coaches here, more learned than me, would have been doing that, but that's still kind of nearly half surprised me saying that. So that's like a small thing to be able to... The awareness piece, is that...
Yeah, and I mean, there's a pen and paper exercise there. Get your week, put in your training sessions first, that goes in first, and then look at when they're eating around that. So again, if somebody's in a job and they're a teacher, let's say, and they might have to do, you know, supervision at school at lunchtime, that lunchtime could last anything from 11:45, maybe to 1:30. You know, so say you're on supervision, you're getting your dinner at 11:45, and you're going to training that night at 7, and you're not really sure about eating that much, and suddenly, you know, you've a big gap before you go into training session. And that will have an impact somewhere down the line. Or you have your dinner then before you go to training, but you've heard, God, I can't eat late at night because it's not good for me. So you don't eat anything after that. So your recovery is impacted. And actually you're going to the gym the next morning at 7 o'clock and you eat after that. So you've not only now got 2 training sessions in 13 hours, but you've now got a gap from 5 o'clock in the evening right through to 9 o'clock the next morning. So there's a double whammy of impacts that's going to mean that you're not going to get value for money out of that gym session or the next training session on the pitch.
You touched on something just a little bit earlier with the front page of Men's Health, but you know, we'll all get and understand. But the other piece was nearly you could be, I think what you were saying was you could nearly be too slim, dare I say it, because actually that's counterintuitive, it's against what you want to be. The ignorance piece of this, we were talking just briefly before we came on about chasing perfection. And that isn't a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that it is, but sometimes it kind of derails people. And I have seen, and in fact, I mean, I know I have an athlete that I've worked with, and they lost their medal because of perfectionism.
Just what do you
because they overtrained, more is better. You know, in the food bit, it's interesting because, and this would be a real red flag for me, in some of our sports we actually give them their lunch and dinner as well as breakfast. Some of the sports actually pay in for that. And this particular athlete refuses to eat the food that's been given. They make their own. And from a nutritionist point of view, that's always, because they think that that's a better, more perfected method, is that it's right. Now I look at it and I go, well, I mean, some of these bars that you're eating, you know, you don't know the list of ingredients. I can't either pronounce them or spell them. You know, these protein bars and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not against them, but I cannot stand them. I mean, they're just brutal. I mean, and half the time you'd be better off, to be honest, eating a chocolate bar, right? And I mean, you look at the list of ingredients and then, you know, what are some of the key ticket items that they're selling them on that's good for you? Anybody, any ideas? What are they selling it on that's good for you, some of these products? Protein, brilliant. I mean, you can put protein on anything now and it's good for you, right? Protein ice cream, protein Mars bars, protein whatever. And what's the other thing that they sell it on?
Low fat.
Well, yeah, but there's a deadly nutrient at the moment that's really not good for you. That's sugar, right? So it's low in sugar or no sugar, and it's high in protein. So when they take out the sugar, most of it tastes sweet, right? They put in these things called sugar alcohols or polyols, and they absolutely rip the guts out of you. I'm sure people have been in changing rooms after people have had a couple of protein bars, and it's not a good place to be. Not on any level, so, but that's not healthy either, so this word healthy is a context thing. So for me, an athlete that's getting injured all the time, or getting sick all the time, or getting broken bones, or rib bones in rowing, or shin splint, or we've broken feet, metatarsals, and we've broken femurs, which is really serious in a lot of our endurance athletes. That's not healthy. But I'll guarantee you, I mean, I've seen bloods, let's say, now I work with boxing a lot, and some of their behaviours, people would say, geez, they're not the best in the world. And you work with athletics, for example, and I mean, you look at their Instagram profiles and it's beautiful, there's rocket and tomatoes and just looks fabulous, right? But they've just run 10k or 20k and they've got a bowl of lettuce and tomatoes. And then there are fractures, flat left all over the place. I mean, that's not healthy. They need to be eating actually some of the other things. And it's funny because I would see their bloods, and sometimes, you've got the boxers who I'm trying to keep some of them out of, and that's a generalisation. It's not, but actually they're fueling what they need to do. And when you look at their bloods, where I'm there saying, right, let's keep the takeaways down a wee bit more, lads. Let's do this. And then you've got the ones on the rocket and the tomatoes, and you look at if you looked at two sets of bloods blindly, you would actually think that the ones generally that are eating the rocket and tomatoes, their bloods are shocking. It's like a nursing home. I've actually said that to teams where I've had to come in as the bad cop, and because again, remember a squad that was going, and their big thing was, and I said this to them, I said, you're thinking there's going to be 200 million people watching you on TV. How am I going to look? I said, the thing about it is, nobody remembers how you're going to look, but they will remember if you play like whatever. And I mean, I said to them, I said, I'm looking at your bloods here, and I think I'm looking at a nursing home.
But just a great one for the protein bars, the nursing homes, like.
You have to catch them, or poke the hairs.
Yeah. No, but it sparked me into it, like just the way you've illustrated it, which is brilliant. But I guess a lot of this comes back to people.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have a level of trust there, Sharon. Somebody's telling you, don't eat the protein bar. Do you know what? You're better off taking a Mars bar. And in fact, see the rocket and tomato, gorgeous, Instagrammable, beautiful. Get something else that's a bit more
time and a place for that. And the time and the place is me.
But this kind of comes back to people.
Yeah.
Which I'm wondering, how do clubs and coaches get someone like that to people to buy into? Because you've touched on a couple of things there that was like, it's okay, you said it, and we all believe you and get it. But the normal 5-8 maybe coming into a club, some of our coaches here going back and saying exactly what you just said there, people would potentially roll the eyes.
Well, and again, look at your training regime, look at what you're doing, look at your players. Are some of them getting sick or injured more frequently than they should do? They're not that unlucky. It comes back to that. So once you've got that, and I suppose the carrot that I would always use, or the rocket, is, listen, I want to keep you healthy. And I know this, and when I'm asking them to, I mean, I worked in rowing for a while, and one of the athletes accused me of trying to make her into a Christmas turkey. Right? That was fundamentally about before Christmas. The language wasn't great, and she wasn't this was 7 months of work that we'd done, and she wasn't buying into the advice because she couldn't see, and this is human nature. And it's like how many people's January resolutions are starting to wobble a wee bit now. You know, people want to see a difference and a change almost immediately if you make a change, particularly around food. But the reality is, it's the things you can't see and can't feel that's actually, so hormones play a big role, particularly both in males and females, of allowing that physicality to change. But you making a change won't actually change those for maybe a couple of weeks or months down the line, and then and that's why starvation diets and stuff don't work. But I totally get that, and I mean, people don't believe me either. And the problem that I have is that there's so many voices out there in this area and I would say, if you see somebody on Instagram that has no clothes on giving you advice on nutrition, don't listen to it. That's fundamentally the starting point. If I start taking my clothes off now on Instagram, I mean, we know we've all sorts of problems there.
Jesus, we're off one here now. I'm worried about the direction.
But there's no, I mean, I guarantee you know them, don't you?
Abby Abdu, is the guy, he's the guy, like people swears by him,
he's the protein guy, isn't he?
Yeah, big time, but
protein and bad language, isn't that it?
Conversation with myself and my brother. The perfectionism thing, which we touched upon, which you were saying, Kevin, in a way that you don't need to start there with the analysis and all around that piece. You start on pen and paper, but again, that kind of comes back to people. And it's entrusting people to work, maybe in a shoestring, maybe with loads of, just because you have all the licenses, as you say, whatever it is, doesn't mean that it's going to be good analysis. So you have to get the right people to do that. Is there a basic educational piece there that's going to help some of these coaches to inform and educate, that they can give a level of analysis that's going to be something that you can digest and make the most out of?
Yeah, so the analysis world, back when I was Ulster GAA, we used to inundate stuff about this new app or this new software, all this. The amount of clubs or even counties I've seen that bought a piece of software, sat on the shelf, never used, because they bought the software doesn't do the work. The software needs someone then to run it on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis.
But is that still happening, Kevin? That wouldn't be my understanding of, maybe senior club sides.
It's not happening as much now because there are more and more people proactive about actually getting into it,
which again comes back to people.
You need the people who are going to do it, and the people who are going to commit time. You need, if you're going to invest, so my go-to club or anything, if they ask me for a piece of software, who's going to run it? Who have you got identified? And if they turn around and say, my head coach or the lead coach or this coach or that coach is going to do it, no, you need someone standalone who's going to be dedicated just to doing this and link it into the management team. And that can be anyone from within the club who has any interest in trying to help out or work with. And look, in terms of the education pieces, there's been really, really positive stuff that's happened with the performance analysis community, and it's been driven a lot by Denise Martin, Johnny Bradley down through Carlo. But I think it was October, it's a conference, it's a one-day conference, but they've got these cohorts of level 1, level 4 accredited performance analysts working GAA. So it's actually a separate website linked to the GAA website, but there's a list of all these people in every county who've done these accreditations. So they're the go-to, at a county level, they're the go-to ones, and you look at them and you say, right, they're in the county, link in with them. And at a club level, to me it's a very simple task of talking to people, who would be interested. If we the one I always went to, is there any young lads who have been really unfortunate with injury and maybe aren't going to be called or aren't going to be playing, but they're really keen to be involved, that they'd be interested in doing something like this? Let's get them in, because they're really keen to be involved in the club and around the setup. Let's get them in, let's get them onto some of these workshops, onto some of these courses, get them through them, and then let's start to grow from that. The amount of people, saying young lads, they're probably not young lads anymore, but when I was with Ulster GAA, 3, 4, 5 guys come in nearly every year where you say, right, let's get you in, see what you can do. Some of those guys are still working with county teams at the moment. Brian McGuigan will work with Irish League Celtic team, and he went to the Paralympic Games. So these guys that come in, some of them will naturally just take to it if it becomes a career. Some of them may dip into it for 2 or 3 years and move on. But for that 2 or 3 years, they're making use of a piece of software, or they're doing something that's useful within the club or the county. So it's about giving the people the opportunities and just trying to give them get them on the right pathway through whatever education system involved to get them into it. And some of them will take it and flourish in it, others will, move out or something else. But it is, if you don't have a person to run it, or if you don't have someone dedicate the time that usually falls to the website, it's the first thing. And every week with the coaching team, you have 3 or 4 people in the management team. It's, this coach is going to be looking after the analysis. All of a sudden, we start to get into the games. Haven't time to worry about that this week. We'll worry about the analysis next week. We'll move on, and then the analysis starts to become more disjointed. And we don't do it as often. And then they'll revisit with the championship. At which stage, maybe lost 2 months of analysis because we haven't actually done it, and we're looking at the same things we're looking at 2 months ago. So it's just having someone who it's going to be their role, it's going to be their job, where they're going to feed in the management team and work with the players.
You said something just a little bit earlier about the numbers. The numbers are more important than anything else, and I know they're kind of linked, they don't get me wrong. But what are the numbers that you immediately look for? What do you find? And I appreciate we're going into a period of rule change, which is going to kind of change Gaelic football, not hurling. But from your point of view, what are the numbers that you think, right, here's what I think of the numbers we've got to prioritise, and here's why.
So if you're looking at it on a really simple basis, the game, the one key number that you can take that will give you information just so you get your score, you don't find the score of the game, you don't score at any stage in the game. If you know what's our possession time, so many possessions we have, many possessions of the opposition, when I mean team in general, so we won the ball from the throw in, we've kept it for a minute and a half and then we get shot away, that's one possession. If you can keep a count for each team, then you can start to build right how effective are our possessions. Now if you can build that up to keep a count of our possessions and how many shots we got away, right, we'll know how effective we are getting possession in the shooting position and get the shot away, then we can start to see how effective are we getting the shot converted. So if we've got a problem with creating the shot, or we've got a problem with finishing it, and that's 2 really simple ones, that just from keeping a possession count and a shot count, all of a sudden you get those ratios and you can start to see, you know what, 80% of the time we get our possession to the shot, but only 30% of the time we convert the shot. So the problem's actually in the last stage, the problem's the shooting. And then you can delve into that more and start to say, right, what is it they're shooting? Where are we shooting from? And that's a pen and paper, take away X. There's the X, there's the number of the person that took the shot. You can start to see, are people shooting from the wrong areas? Is that what the problem is? Or are we getting into the right areas and just not finishing? And in that case, then it becomes a skill thing. So it's not tactics, we just need to improve our shooting, or we need to find shooters, whatever it may be. But you just sort of build on those wee elements where you start to say possession count first, shot count, and you can do the same with the kickouts. And some of these things link quite nicely because in a game live, they're not actually that pressurised. You'll always look to see where the kickout goes. Right, we won that kickout. Well, that winning of the kickout automatically corresponds to you having possession, so it's just one look at the pitch. Quick mark, there you go, move on, and then you can see your kick-out ratios too. So it's just building gradually and through this stuff to get more and more information out of it.
That was really interesting, just starting off with the possession piece. Folks, anybody any questions? Because we're wrapping up this piece. Has anybody got any questions for the panel? This man here down at the back. Let me come down to you there, fella, so everybody can hear you.
Sorry for Kevin. We prepare library clips, prepare a gallery of clips and 200 clips. Is there an easy way, or what's the best way for players to access those clips?
This is something that's a wee bit of an issue across the board in terms of where we store video and who we store video of, and the controls around that. There's still all the GDPR stuff, which I despise with a passion. But if you're asking me, it's always cloud-based stuff. So having somewhere on the cloud that you have access to. So if it's underage, so long as all the parents have access to it too, then you generally are covering yourself. And that can also be, if you put it on a cloud, so if you put it on OneDrive, Dropbox would be my preference. I put it in Dropbox, I'll have, say it's under 16 boys football, there's a general folder, and then within that you've got an individual folder for player 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And all you have to do is share that folder with that player and their parents, and then they can see their own clips. And if you want general clips, you can just put them in another separate folder and share that with everybody. But like those cloud-based platforms, you go to NAC Sport, Dartfish, and Podwell, they're all places that are bespoke software for analysis. They do that sort of thing. But any of the cloud-based platforms, OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, all do the same thing without it being, they're not as expensive, and it's maybe not as clean looking, but if it's just clips you're putting on, that's ideal for doing it.
Sorry, just one other last question. Is there an easy way or a cheap way or whatever to use practice live clips, let's say at half time, if you're videoing? Is there an easy way to take those clips and show them?
Not without the software. That's where the software do come into their own. You can connect directly to the camera and have the laptop there, and you just click a piece and fire it into a playlist and take the laptop in. So I haven't come across a way of doing it without any of the softwares, and that's where the software make their money, because that's what they're designed to do.
Could I ask Sharon, please, what do you think are the simple things we could do at underage level to introduce nutritional concepts? We probably generally take it as read. There's not much happening in the schools, the detail of which we may not know, but we know it's happening. That we do possibly take it as read, well, all that good work is done. But if it's like anything else, I guess, skills, athletic development, it's usually not the case.
I mean, I think giving them a sense that, looking at their week when they're training, whether it's your training or other trainings that have been added into it, making them aware that there's no magic switch that goes off at 12 midnight and it means that Paddy's ready to go the next day. So again, every day has an impact on the next day. Asking them things like, do they feel tired? And, the consistency is not there. And then just basic things like on training days, breakfast definitely needs to be bigger. In fact, what you can do is you can actually see your supper as your first breakfast for the next day, so that you're prepping for the next day from the night before. Because again, you run into youngsters not wanting to have breakfast. If that's the case, then even things like a carton of milk and a banana going out to school is the best way forward. That's the day where they might need to have a bigger lunch. So whether they get school dinners or they add something to that, or they have a big, double sandwich or a triple decker or whatever. And then that piece then for after school, are they going to after school's training for something? Having something for that as well. And again, that's where some of those yogurt, sachets, yogurt drinks come in. And again, we're building around foods that are going to do other things. So for example, and this is the reason why I'm not particularly keen on the whey protein powders. Whey protein just gives you protein. Whereas if you use Greek yogurt, so you get the protein, but you also get the calcium, which is really important for growing bones for youngsters as well. And again, we talk about what we can see. I think bone health is really important, and it's the one that, I'm seeing bones of youngsters that have come through COVID when they couldn't play games, and they went to the road and they started running. And I've seen massive amount of bone injuries in youngsters. So you can't see bones or you can't feel them. And when you can, you have a problem. So we have to think about putting into that bone pension for youngsters. So your calcium-containing foods, just eating regularly, none of the big gaps. And again, even for youngsters that are doing gym-based sessions, get them to bring in a yogurt to the session. They can't do it when they're running, but what you're doing is you're putting money into the bank to spend immediately, and then you can go from that. If you've got a club and you can provide them with soup and a roll afterwards, fantastic. There's small things. Make sure that they don't come to training at the weekend without breakfast, and then show them that is impacting their ability to run then as well. So there are small things. Suggesting things like what they would bring with them for blitzes. That doesn't mean cutting out all the stuff that maybe they want to have, but say, you can have this, but you need to have your rolls, you need to have a bit of fruit, you need to have your milk or yogurt drink with you, and then yes, you can do some of the other things too.
Thank you to both of you for a wonderful presentation. Sharon, just in my day job, I'm actually a milk agent for Glanbia.
I don't have a dairy here, by the way, just in case you don't get this.
So the next question, my wife is medical and she thinks we're mad anyway. We keep producing protein milk, all different colours and flavours and that, and more recently then protein water and protein soup is the latest one.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
Listen, going back to it, if you in the protein milk, it's just extra dried milk powder. I think that goes into it, or you just is not the way that it's formulated. So, I mean, from an anti-doping point of view, it's a much safer option than going out and buying some of your powders, which you don't know where they've come from. I mean, and I would be really very, very. You just don't know. 25% of the stuff that's in supplements, we don't know what it is, right? And the cheaper it is, the bigger the risk, right? So again, what we're doing with protein is we're making it into this wonder nutrient, right? Now, it's great, but we are not, rugby players. We have to run. And you have to put the right fuel in the tank. So sometimes an overemphasis on one nutrient then means that we think carbohydrates not doing the job. But actually, ask your players, are they still sore after their training sessions, right? Or the next day they get up and they can hardly walk. They're not putting enough carbohydrate into the tank to do the work that they need to do, but they're focusing on protein, which they think is the answer to all their prayers. And actually that's where milk is probably a really good option, because you do have the carbohydrate in there alongside the protein, which I would say is perfect. Protein soup, throw a bit of chicken in that, and I think we have it there, haven't we? But anyway.
Perfect. Time for one last question.
Hi Kevin, I'm just wondering about stats of training. Yes, no, some, if so, what?
If it's related to the stuff that you're looking at in games, so if you were taking something in the game that you're trying to work on, like stuff that we would have used in the past would have been, going back to that previous question, the returns from certain possessions would have been, right, we need to generate a score of 8 in every 10 possessions, or we need to generate a shot of 8 in every 10 or something like that. So you'd easily set up, your two teams, right, we're going to have 8 possessions each, or 10 possessions each, and see how we go. So it has its place, without crippling what you're doing. Looking over at Eugene here, because I remember when I worked in Ulster GAA, we're always at loggerheads about this, about paralysis by analysis. So I wouldn't get too involved in it, and I wouldn't have it impact on the flow of the session. But to have players aware of what's going on aware of what you're looking at in games, and then bringing that into the training situation and understanding why it's important. I think that's where it's got real power in training, but it's just not being overcomplicated. I think you're probably on that winner.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the questions there. Folks, that was fantastic. Great stuff. Sharon and Kevin, absolutely brilliant. Close still on, which is always good.
Everybody, everybody.
Yeah. And Kevin just said, use the pen and paper, you don't need the fancy apps, it's just it's easy, this stuff. Folks, round of applause, please.